All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back here to the Lure Lab. We have another awesome episode coming here today for you here on the Serious Angler Network. As always, I am your host, Andrew Full, and today we are diving into the world of balsa. This is an episode that I've been trying to figure out and plan for a while, and I got a hot tip from a buddy over in Eastern New York around Syracuse region, fishes Oneida Lake a lot, TJ Dobbs, and he's like, you got to get Phil Hunt on of PH Custom Lures out of Indiana. And that's exactly what we did. I reached out to Phil, asked him if he wanted to come on the show. And we got him down here in the queue. And I'm extremely excited because a lot of people don't realize how important it is to have balsa baits in your box. And I'm not saying plastic baits are bad, but everybody should have a little bit of everything in their box to catch more bass and to be more efficient while they're on the water. Especially if you're a tournament angler, it's something you should pay a lot of attention to how the fish are reacting. And yeah, I just want to get Phil on. It's going to be an awesome episode and dive right into balsa baits and crankbait fishing in the spring and summertime. So without further ado, Phil, how's it going today?
That's good. It's hot, but it's good. It's nice
Hot
to
and
see
sweaty.
you. Hot and sweaty, like 90 today. It went from winter to summer in 4 days.
It's funny that you mentioned that. Like, I was talking to my wife a couple days ago. I go, we actually had spring this year. Usually we go straight from like 30 to 80. And we went from like 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 60s for like a month and a half. And now we hit 90 here as well today in New York. And it was blistering on the water. Like, I don't think I've ever sweat through a sun shirt, but we had zero wind and bright sun. It was awful.
I know our water was stuck in the low 60s for like a month here. And then yesterday I was fishing I go out in the evening a lot, just 2 or 3 hours because I live close to the lake. And I saw 80-degree water yesterday. And I'm like, holy crap, it went to summer quick.
Is that pretty early for 80-degree water?
No, it's probably normal, 75 to 80 here this time of year. It just took it a while to get there. It got warm and a bunch of fish come up and spawned, and then it turned cold and the water fell back down into the 50s for a few days, and they pulled off. And our spawn has kind of been a trickle. Seems to me like, Smalley spawned and got it done real quick with the largemouth. It's like every week it seems like there's a new wave. When you run the banks, you'll see, not the big deal like you usually have. It's just kind of been drawn out now for 2 months, maybe.
One here, two there.
Yeah. Still catch them with eggs in them. They look like they're going to blow up, and some of them their tails are healing. So
yeah, I'm sure that's going to be over now that the water's 75, 80 degrees. So they dropped them and got out of there in a hurry. So, but before we keep rambling on here, balsa baits, you own PH Custom Lures. You're the one probably turning most of these baits, I would assume. What made you want to start building balsa baits right off the bat? What got you into it?
Well, I'm a little older. I'm 58, and I grew up. Everybody I knew back in the day was throwing Bagleys, and I actually have a lot of old Bagleys, and I was always like enamored with the Bagley square bills, and they didn't have the flat baits and stuff. But I live in close to Cincinnati in Indiana. I live 45 minutes away, and you've got guys like Rick Schreiber who does the laser lures, and you had Wes England that does the wee baits. Everybody knows what they are. So I actually grew up fishing with all these handmade balsa baits, and to be honest, I've always fished tourneys, and I can't remember not fishing. And I got tired of buying baits and opened the package, and you couldn't tune them, and some of them wouldn't run right. And I thought, I wanted to get in and build balsa baits, and I wanted to make sure that they're all tuned. We tune all the baits, which is a really kind of a pain sometimes, but that way I know they all leave here. And I custom painted for a lot of people and a lot of the pros. I was a medic for 20 years, and I did that. And then Bill Lowen is my best friend. We're like brothers. And me and Billy were talking one day, and he's like, well, why don't we make a balsa bait? So we literally started in the corner of my garage with knives and files and fingernail files and a bandsaw. And we just started making little square bills and stuff to play around with and painting them. And he showed some pros. And next thing you know, I start selling them, and I had no business cards, no website. And I worked every third day as a medic, and it got where I was killing myself. And so one day after almost 20 years in EMS, I just walked out, and I've been doing it ever since. I found a guy I got a guy who makes my website, and He's been doing it for years, and he does it mostly for baits. He's got the biggest pH collection in the world, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm
And,
sure he does.
yeah, he does all my work, because it costs thousands to have a website maintained, and all he ever wants is baits. And I got introduced to a lot of writers and editors, and next thing you know, I got guys coming to the shop and writing about my stuff, and
yeah.
I don't even know what to say because I never ever even envisioned it. So,
sometimes the best things happen to those who just take a chance. And it sounds like taking a chance and building baits with Bill Lowen in the corner of the garage with some files. It sounds like tedious work, and now you have this elaborate manufacturing place, right? And that's kind of like a sweatshop, it seems like, because it's so hot in Indiana. But
our shop is actually little because I've had so many writers here, and I actually had a photographer here from People Magazine that a magazine company had sent here. So this guy comes in from Iraq, and he flies to my shop, and he walked in the door, and he's like, God dang, I thought this would be bigger and fancier. And I'm like, no, we really literally do most everything by hand. And same way the first time the Bassmaster guys were here, the writers, 2 of them came, and they're like, we had no idea. We thought this was, but I think that's what makes it cool is had the same people work for me forever, and I'm down to one guy right now just because it's hard to find help. But Josh cares as much about the business as me. And I know that I'm sure that sometimes a bait will get out that maybe is not exactly how I want it. And anybody that calls me, I take care of that immediately. But we try to make sure that every single bait gets attention and it's tuned and they run perfect and how they should be. And they're American made. I'm a patriot. I take a lot of pride in the fact that it's all American made components. The hooks obviously aren't made in America, but everything I try to do American made, and I'm really proud of that.
I love it. So you mentioned tuning a bait, which we're going to ask that question here as we go, but I kind of want to jump right into it, right? Like everybody goes to the store and they see all these fancy labels on the shelves, like Strike King, 6 Cents, Mega Bass, and a lot of these are plastic baits, and some of these companies will dabble in mass producing balsa baits, like a Rapala, right? Like original Shad Rap and DT series are mass manufactured balsa. But can you real quickly dive into just the main differences between plastic and balsa baits?
I think the big difference between balsa and plastic, and I've always thought this since I was a kid. And when we used to wade the river and fish for smallies, and we would throw little balsa honeybees. Remember those? The little bitty, and then smallies just kill them in the creeks and stuff here. And we would throw little Gilmore jumpers and stuff in the creek. And I've always felt like that wood baits just catch them better. And I know there's going to be some people who are going to cringe, but they I know it's a fact. And I would argue this with anyone. If you're going down the bank and you're throwing at wood, a balsa square bill comes through the wood better than any plastic one. And I'll argue that with anybody. The buoyancy's there. If you get hung up, you can pop the line. They're more buoyant. They come free, and they just don't hang up as much. And I'm not saying they never get hung up, because they do. If you're fishing them right, you're going to get them hung up. But I just always have really thought that, everyone has its own personality. They're all a little more buoyant or less buoyant, and the wobble might be a little different. And you'll find one, you have 3 that look just alike, and one will really, really catch them, and you save that one and take care of it. But and I'm not, and I carry a box of RC, like 1.5s and 2.0s. I throw them like around riprap and stuff a lot, because from throwing a balsa is not nearly as durable. Right. If you throw it against a dock or you throw it up on the rocks, you might tear it up. But to me, there is nothing like throwing a balsa square bill or a balsa flat bait. The flat baits are great in the winter. I'm just convinced you get more bites on them. And there's an awful lot of pros that agree with me, because I sell a lot of baits to MLF and Elite Series pros.
Yeah, I think the only one that's kind of come close, in my opinion, on like a plastic side would be like a Fritz side for a flat side crankbait, but it's still plastic.
Yeah. And I've never thrown one, but a lot of people do. I mean,
Sure. They're not bad. I got a bunch of them, and when the water is like 42 to 51 degrees, I find that's when that bait really excels. But I do have a collection of flat-sided balsa baits that I will throw at the same time and catch just as many fish. It just depends on what the primary predator is in that lake. If there's a bunch of pike, I try to throw the Fritz side instead of the high dollar balsa baits because I don't want to
Exactly.
lose them
Yeah.
when I lean into a fish. I'd rather lose the $9 crankbait over a $25 crankbait. So, but before I want to digress here real quick because you mentioned that baits have different wobbles and they all have their own interesting characteristics to them, even though they may all look exactly the same. And my only question is that because it's a different cut of wood or different part of the wood, and is that why it makes those baits swim a little bit differently, like the grains in it or something?
Yeah. It's like I pay extra to have the wood graded according to weight, per stick. But no matter what you do with wood, no two pieces are alike. And even like in a stick, we buy 36 or 48-inch sticks for the machines because I got two machines that run the bodies, and after that, everything's done pretty primitively. But even with throughout that stick, it'll never be the same. So, all of our belly weights are all made out of the same kind of lead. They're all really consistent. But no matter what you do, and then I think that. Like all these plastic baits, they come out of a mold and everyone's exactly the same. And even with those baits, no two of those run alike. If you notice, some will run different. Even I don't understand the physics behind that, even though they're made with bearings in them and a thing. But like the lip can be tilted a little in one of these or the other. Maybe the lip's tilted a little way and the bait's out of kilter. And the best baits, I think, most of my balsa baits, the way we build them, they hunt right and left. And I think that's a big deal. They'll go over and bounce off a log and stuff if you're winding down. And maybe
So
that's
basically,
because,
when you say right and left, as it's retrieving through the water with the balsa bait, it's really important.
yeah,
That like that serpentine S motion while it's kicking.
yeah. Very, very few of them run straight at you. I make a couple models that do. And you don't get that with plastic baits as much. I've not thrown many plastic baits that hunt like that. And to be honest, I think the best, this is going to sound dumb, but I've always felt like the best balsa baits are the ones that aren't perfect. Like if the lip slot's cut a little crooked or it's leaning, those are the ones that are the best because what causes them to hunt, I think, is it's just like a ballast on a battleship. All these big cruise boats, they got ballast at the bottom. If the bait's hunting right and left because it's a little bit, what's the right word? It's a little unstable. So it's trying to right itself all the time. So I think that what happens there is if that lip is off just a little, well, then that bait's constantly trying to right itself and it kicks off and it's more erratic. And I think those are the best ones. But
almost like a big flare as it's like trying to. Would the bait like roll up almost on its side as it's trying to correct?
Oh yeah,
itself?
absolutely,
Like
yeah.
big side
and the
kick.
belly flashes up and stuff. And I got a charger in there in that room on my other computer. Could you get it? Yeah. It's I've had guys call me and say my lip's crooked, and I gladly give them another bait, have them send it back, and I throw those.
Yeah.
They're and I don't mean it's like real crooked. It's not like they're junk, but those are the ones that are really
like a 1 degree variance to the
yeah,
side.
2 degrees off. You can see it a little when you look at and those are the ones that are good because they're constantly trying to right themselves.
Yeah. As long as so basically what you're saying, as long as the belly weight is correct and you tune the bait properly, which we're going to get into here in a little bit on the episode.
Oh yeah.
Like you can tune that bait to swim almost correct, but it's going to give that wider kick action that
exactly. Yeah. Like I could intentionally glue the lip in there really crooked and you just bend the line tie right or left to make that. I mean, it's you can tune that right out of them. And I feel like those are the ones that are the best, but a lot of guys don't. And I know I was talking to Rick Clun one time at a show and he's like, dude, I love your baits, but he's like, I don't like the baits that hunt. And I'm like, what? And he's like, well, I number my baits A, B, and C. And he's like, the C baits are the baits I practice with, baits like yours that hunt right and left. And he was saying that he feels like that when the fish are tracking the bait and the bait goes right and left, that they'll miss that bait sometimes. So he picks the ones out that don't hunt for the tournament day, and he picks the ones that do hunt to find the fish because he feels like he gets more bites. And I don't know if you've ever had any of the pros tell you that.
That's crazy. No, I have not, but that is a wild theory.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Like, and here I am thinking like when I fish a chatterbait, like we're gonna get way off topic here for a second. Like with a chatterbait, I'm doing some of my rod tip and the way I'm reeling it to make it do weird things in the water to trigger a strike. Like to me personally, I want something that hunts more because it's erratic, and you have to think about baitfish. If a bass is hunting down a baitfish and it's tracking it, that baitfish is darting left or right trying to get away. Like that natural hunting motion, I think, would trigger more bites, and I honestly believe that they probably get it better.
Yeah, well, I had never heard that, but
Yeah.
me and him alone sat and talked for like an hour, and it was the most interesting hour I've ever spent talking to anybody. And he had all these theories on cranks, and he's like, "Look, if they're erratic, they get much more bites without a doubt." But he's like, "I always feel like I hook more outside the face if they're erratic." So he said, "I actually put A, B, and C on the belly, and I use the A baits for the tourney days and the B's and C's for the." So it's interesting. So I guess the reason I threw that in is because there's going to be guys that are going to watch this and they're not going to agree with that, and that maybe they have the same mindset as him, you know.
Yeah, well, we're on that topic. If you're tuned in on YouTube, leave a comment down below. Let's make it interesting, and then we can start a direct conversation dialogue with Phil on YouTube and see, so he can see all of your opinions. I think that'd be something cool. Like, I mean, I'm always open for open discussion on that stuff because, you know, we're here, we love bass fishing, and having more dialogue maybe helps answer questions people are afraid to ask, or it just makes people think outside the box or different from what the average norm is and the way they think when they're fishing. And that's awesome. Like, I want erratic. I want something that runs true while being erratic. So when I say true, I mean that it's stable. Like, I want something that's stable while it's coming through the S, so it doesn't blow out and roll and get tangled. Like, I want it to come at me and fish. And if I give it a couple twitches and pause it, that bait turns and then I can get it going again. That's even better. So
I want to be a fellow in a laser lure, which Rick makes awesome flat or balsa baits, and his actually are made not with a duplicator. They cut them with a bandsaw and shape them with fingernail files. And I had a flat bait of his. I want to BFL on it, and I like nursed that bait for like 3 years. That exact one bait. There was something about that one that was special, and I noticed that when I did it, I was looking at it one day from the front, and the lip slot was perfectly level in the bait, but the lip was glued in a little crooked. But you could tune that out. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that there was something about that one bait, and when I finally broke it in half, I about cried. You know what I mean? Because I want a lot of money on that bait. And
that once you get to a certain point, it's almost like, okay, I need to put this one on the shelf. I actually have an OSP deep diving crankbait that I've retired because just about all the paint has been blown off the sides of it. So I'm like, I can't throw this bait anymore. I will cry. When, oops.
It's amazing, and I feel really, really lucky and really humble that I get to do what I do. I love my job. I love painting baits. I never come in here and think I get stressed because I'm behind on orders, but I love it, and I get to play, and I constantly am playing with new stuff. And like I'm working on a little bait here. Here's the body for it, and I want to make a medium runner, like a bait that. And this is a fairly.
It almost looks like it has a rock crawler style body to it.
Yeah. Well, I didn't intend to it, but that's kind of what it's shaped like. And I want a medium running bait with a line tie in the lip that goes.
Uh-oh. I think we just lost Phil. His computer may have died. So we'll give it a second here, and hopefully he can get back in here quickly. But I think the point he's talking about with the line tie in there with the rock crawler style bait and a medium diving balsa bait is the fact that when you have a medium diving crankbait in general, like, it is one of the harder baits to find, not just fine tune, but know where to fish it, because you want to be popping it out of things. You want to keep it crawling along. I think we got him back here. Give me a thumbs up if you're ready to come back in, Phil.
I don't know why. I just took it off charge and brought it over here, and it was fully charged. But we're on the phone, so are we good?
You are good. I just wanted to make sure you're back. So, talking about the medium diving balsa crankbait here, and the line tie is right where it cut out.
I got it leaned up here. I got a computer guy here with me, my brother-in-law. So I wanted. And anyway, I have played with this, and I can't get it how I wanted. So I've been playing with it for months, and it would be easy to make a square bill or a shallow bait, but I'm not going to quit until I get something that I want, something I can throw that goes 7-8 foot deep without a great big giant profile, and it tracks. I want to be able to burn it. And so I'm lucky that the funnest part about my job is I get to play all the time. Yeah. We cut stuff out, don't paint it, put belly weights, line ties in it, and mess around. And the guy that Josh has worked for me a long time, and Josh is like family. I couldn't do this without him. And he's actually made a couple baits we sold. He did them. He plays around. I don't even know he's playing around, and he'll have something cool, and we'll throw it in the pool, and he'll be like, God, look how awesome this is. So it's a lot of the good stuff is done by accident, or I dream about it. I've had a couple baits that I had a dream at night, and I would get up and go straight out to the shop and draw it out and cut one out before I forgot. You know what I mean? So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I just want to throw a side note in there when you're talking about dreaming. And I think this is somewhere that a lot of people miss in life is if you have a dream that's a really good idea and it wakes you up, write it down, because in the morning when you're having your cup of coffee or doing whatever you do in the morning, you're going to be like, crap, what was that dream I had last night? And I know a couple of people that actually wake up in the middle of the night and write their dreams down so that they remember it. And it like, I feel like a very successful person is somebody who takes advantage of these situations that we like, not I don't even know what the word I'm thinking of, subconsciously think about while we're sleeping, because that's what we're supposed to be doing. Like, we could take advantage of those situations. Something good happens, like starting a balsa bait company on a whim in the corner of your garage with
So it's I've literally got for years my building was on my property, and I've got out of bed and thrown on a pair of shorts and run out there to the shop and start making them at 2 a.m. because I had these stupid dreams, and I wanted to do it while I could remember it, while it was fresh, and it's I'm really a lucky guy. I'm not a good business person. I'm not ever going to get rich doing this, but I enjoy dealing with the guys, and I enjoy making the baits.
If it's something that you truly enjoy, you're already rich. Money doesn't buy happiness, but being rich with thought and enjoying what you do is even more important, in my opinion. So that's awesome. Now, kind of want to jump ahead here. First, I want to make a side note. I'm excited to see what happens with that medium diver, because I know Somalis will absolutely love that thing. But two, we're talking warming water. It's hot already, especially going through a huge warming trend all over the Northeast and Indiana, where you're at. What are some of the best balsa baits? Because, a lot of people think about, balsa is just for the wintertime because of the way it floats and triggers strikes. But what are some of the best balsa baits to throw when the water is actually warming or already hot? Like, you've seen guys like Greg Hackney do really well on square bills on Lake Dardanelle when the water is like 82 degrees. Like, so kind of dive into that realm if you don't mind.
Well, I'm kind of the same way. I throw square bills, and I really am partial to the big fatter ones. Our Hunt and Pea and our Little Hunter are kind of a hybrid. They're kind of a fat bait, and when I did the masters for the machine, I actually flattened off the sides, so they have a little bit of that flat bait flash, but they're still a hard wobbling round bait. But the ones I really like are the real round, aggressive ones, like our P1. You and I were talking about that before we started. It's similar to the Norman bait you were talking about. Like, it's similar to the old original Bagleys, the B series. And I like the B2. And then I build one called a Mag Hunter, which is a flat bait, a 3-inch bait. And I catch a lot of fish on that. I think there's a lot of times them fish like those bigger baits. They eat them gizzard shads. I mean, look at the whole glide bait fad. Guys are out there throwing 10-inch glide baits, but then a lot of people are scared to throw a 3-inch crankbait.
Or like I have a plastic one here, but like a 4.0 Strike King.
Yeah.
When the water's warm, they're not afraid to eat big baits.
No, not at all. But growing up, but I say that, and like in the summer, the bulk of my cells are the fat, aggressive square bills. In the winter, we can't make skinny peas fast enough. It's a flat bait. If you can see that when they're thin, they got a real tight wobble. But growing up on the Ohio River, probably been more tourneys cranking on the Ohio River on the flat baits, like the old wee baits. And Wes has died now. I mean, he built an awesome bait, and they're really handmade, primitive, but they catch the crap out of them. And there's so many of those tourneys down there that are won in the summer months on a flat bait, still like you would throw in the winter. And maybe that's because of fishing pressure. Maybe the fish see so many of them aggressive, square bills, that those flat baits, they don't see them as much. They see them when it's cold, and when the water gets 55, everybody transitions over. So maybe there's just no hard and fast rules in fishing,
Yeah. So with a flat bait, though, like, you can basically throw any style of bill in it. You could have like a circular bill, you can have more rounded out, wider. You can put a square bill in it, like you see in some of the plastic ones. Like, What with the bill, like how does that change the action of the bait? And maybe like if you have more of like a rounded spoon bill type on a flat side, is that something that really like hunts harder and is a better warm water bait? Like, is the bill what makes up making that bait better in the warm water, or is it just something that I'm thinking about just completely in my mind right now?
I think it's I think it's a combination of both. Actually, I mean, obviously square bills kick off harder and they do come through wood better than any of the round bills. Even a big round bill just doesn't come through wood like a square bill. And a lot of it's got to do with the lip angle. You can change the lip angle 2 degrees and you would be shocked how much difference it makes in the action or how it comes through cover. And then like with the square bills, you can put them in the lip right against the face of the bait, or you can put them out of the front. We build them both ways, but just moving that line tie up and down a 16th of an inch can make a huge difference. I mean, anytime we design a new bait, I might make 25 out of that body before we get it how we want it. So, but in the summer, I definitely like the square bills unless I'm throwing a deep bait. But I do normally in the box year round. I have a flat bait that's subtle tied on just for when they're getting pressured or you have high skies maybe, and I like a lot of the foiled finish baits, like the flat baits that I throw in the summer or usually have a foil finish on them. Maybe that's just in my head, but I know I sell a tremendous amount of foiled finish baits, so there's a lot of people that believe the same as I do.
Okay, so now here I apologize. I just saw another question here right off the cuff, but
No.
when people throw jerk baits, let's throw jerk baits in the equation. You want bright colors like a white or an opaque color or a matte
Mhm.
color when it's cloudy, and when it's sunny, you want something that's see-through or foiled. Is that something that you see with balsas as well? Like if it's clear sunny, you might want to throw a foiled bait, and then if it's cloudy, then you'd stick to your brighter colors that pop like an opaque white or a bone.
Yeah. And watercolor is a big thing. Like the bulk of my square bill sales, obviously in the spring it's everything red. I mean, even through the first part of the square bill season, you can't make enough red baits. Anything with red, orange on it. But all through the summer months, honestly, and if I think about all the baits that I've sold to Elite Series and MLF pros, FLW guys, uh, the best seller by far is Chartreuse and Black all summer, just old school Chartreuse and Black with an orange belly. And then a lot of them call me and they'll say, I just want something white. So white with a black, like pearl with a black back and a little orange, or like my second biggest selling color is called something special. It's pearl white with a black back, has a little chartreuse and orange on the throat and a little silver glitter. That's probably my second biggest seller. And actually it's a huge flat bait seller too. And then I've got a color called Money, and I don't even remember how this come about. It's just a silver foiled bait, has a chartreuse and orange belly, and it has this funky, ugly green back. It's like a light green, pearly looking color. And I honestly don't remember. It's something Lowen and I were playing around with one time when we had paint in the gun, and it's probably in my top 3 all-time bestsellers in all of my anything that I build that you
That color
mine through the
sounds
water.
quote unquote money. Like
That's
it's
what it
kind
is. That's what we called it. That
yeah,
yeah,
it's
but
kind of like it sounds like it's a foiled mismatch of like a Tennessee shad meets a
yeah,
foil back with like a perch belly, so it kind of covers
yeah. And I
the
don't have
different.
one laying. Yeah, I don't have one here handy. I do have a something special laying here, and so it's just it looks purpley on mine in the light,
Yeah,
but it's just a black back and just simple. And that's one thing I've noticed, like with the pros. I don't know if you want to if this is pertinent or not, but I noticed like you've heard that whole adage, you got to catch fishermen, not fish so much,
yeah.
and that's true to an extent because if I take the time and paint some really cool, pretty color, like I just did. Like I'm getting ready to do this, and this will catch them, but this is a pumpkin seed color that I just was playing around with this last week. I posted it and guys went crazy about it. But I noticed when I sell to like guys who make a living fishing around the country, all they want is something shad colored, something white, something chartreuse for dirty water, and something red in the spring. I mean, most of those guys keep it really, really simple, I've noticed.
Yeah, you would love my crankbait box. It's literally bluegill, shad, and black and chartreuse or blue and chartreuse. Like
Yeah.
the 4 colors, and then some craws mixed in for deeper divers, but extremely, extremely simple. Because I feel
Yeah.
like if you match your crankbait to the bait fish that the fish are eating, and then you can add
Yeah.
in the color conditions that you have. So is it cloudy or
Uh-huh.
sunny out? You're going to be able to get a lot more bites because you can move through a color of a crankbait. So let's take a crawfish, for example. In my opinion, you can have 2 different color crankbaits in craw pattern, but if you have one for bright color conditions, bright sun, high skies, and you have one for cloudy days, you just have to know which one to throw when, and you're still going to get bit on it. And that's
yeah. Like this color here, if you can see it, the older guys will know what it is. It's just the old gray ghost that Bagley's used to make.
Say it looks like a lavender shad to me. So
yeah, well, see, it's actually a gray with gold glimmer shot over it. It's just a play of light here, I guess. But Lee Sisson is a really good friend of mine. And if you know the name Lee, he's a legend in the balsa industry. And I actually bought Lee out when he went out of business, bought his duplicating machines, and he comes and deer hunts with me. I've learned so much from that guy. He's just a ball of knowledge. And he said even back when he worked for Bagley's for all those years, it was a chartreuse and black and a pearl white black back, and then this gray ghost was always by far the best sellers year in and year out. And I think but you got to make those pretty colors, and you got to add stuff every year to keep the sales going. And I mean, there's no sense in acting like that doesn't happen, because it does. I mean, everyone wants to sell baits, but I think we put more into it than the fish. Maybe you think. I don't think they're as picky as we are sometimes.
Because I mean, and the best way to go about that, and this is like a fantastic serious angler show, is like why we shouldn't be so picky about baits, because literally you can go to a weigh-in, and if you look at every deck of every angler that fishes, everybody will have something different on, because they're fishing their confidence and what they want to throw.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that just tells you right there that the fish don't care. You just have to present it properly enough. Yeah, they might want green pumpkin over black and blue one day, but they don't care about that tiny little purple flake that you have in one of your baits, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just fish whatever you have your confidence in, especially crankbaits, and don't be afraid to throw a balsa bait, because they do get it. But I do have another question for you here. We kind of already went through the difference between a round and a flat-sided crankbait and their actions, but I'm sure you take calls all the time about like some misconceptions about these baits. So like, what is a common one that you get, or a couple common misconceptions that you get on a regular basis from people calling or emailing in about the crankbaits that you produce?
One thing I'll say is that I tell guys a lot who haven't thrown them, or maybe they haven't cranked or haven't fished a lot, is, the square bill baits, they all come through trees really, really good. But no matter what you do with a flat bait, with those rounded lips, like none of the flat baits come through cover very well. So I did my bait called a flat pea 12 years ago, and Lowen had a lot to do with designing that. And we put a bigger round bill in it, and it's a shallow bait, line tie in the nose. And now, like Strike King has one really similar called the Chick Magnet. Those come through wood better than most of the other flat bills or flat baits, I think, because for once they're 1/2 inch wide baits. They're a little more buoyant, and the rounded bill's a little better, but none of them come through cover very well. And I know maybe that's not what you were asking. As far as misconceptions, maybe, boy, that's kind of
it's kind of a convoluted question. So I guess a misconception would be great with the flat side, because people might think because it's balsa that it does go through cover well, but you also have to have the proper lip design that goes with it. So pay attention to what flat side you're buying with
exactly
the lip, and also know how fast that bait floats, or if you do any modifications to it, like putting a different treble hook on, a size up, it might suspend a little bit more and rise slower. Or if you add suspend dots, it might sink. Like, be very cognizant and mindful of what you're doing to these baits.
Yeah, and you're spot on there. And that's one thing that like when I throw a square bill, I throw it right in the wood where you throw a spinner bait or flip a jig, and I wind it out and I bump it into the stuff. I see guys like being all finessey, or because they're worried about paying a lot of money for a bait and they don't want to get hung up. The more you crash them into stuff, I'm convinced the more bites you get. But like in the early in the year when the water's in the 40s or low 50s and we're all throwing flat baits around here, and almost everybody is, when I throw a flat bait in a treetop, that's one time when I feel a limb coming, I might stop right before I hit it. If you pay attention, you'll know, and let it kind of come up and over it, because they're not going to come through the woods so good. And then I think a big thing that guys don't think about, and I'm not trying to act like it's, I don't want this to sound like I'm a know-it-all, I know everything about crankbaits, because I don't. But one thing that I hear when guys call me, a big question I get is guys will call me and they'll say, like, what rod do you use with this bait, or what line do you use? And I think people don't a lot, and I do it. Yeah, because just going from mono to fluorocarbon can be huge when you're cranking. You know what I mean? Or like the size line. Like I did really good in a tourney down at Douglas 4 years ago in the fall, and I was throwing my big 3-inch square bill, and the lake had come up like 4 feet, like in a couple days, and got dirty, and I wasn't catching them, and the bait was going too deep. So I sit down and put it on a rod with 20-pound mono. And it made all the difference in the world. I ended up doing really good. We made a video after the event. We went out the next day, made a video, got some nice fish catches, and that 20-pound mono kept that bait from digging into the bottom so bad. Just, you know what I mean? And just like the angle of the rod is huge. You know, most everybody points their rod down when they're cranking, and I do too. But if I throw it up in a tree, say if you're throwing a bait that goes 5 foot deep and you're fishing on 2 foot flats, you can still do that. Just put heavy mono on there and hold your rod up in the air. It makes such a big difference. Like, I've been lucky. I've always had an in-ground pool until the last year or so. And it's amazing how much you play in that pool, how much you can learn about baits, you know, and not even balsa baits. It's like Lowen and I one time wanted to know what shaky head style worms float up. Hardly none of them do. Did you know that? I mean, you put them in a jig head, they fall over. You learn that. And then we've went so far, you're going to think this is stupid. I know exactly what a balsa bait sounds like when it comes by my head underwater. And I know exactly what a KVD 1.5 sounds like. And maybe that's part of the mystique of balsa, because even though, like, I make baits with rattles, I don't like to make them with rattles, but I do make some models. But all of those baits are actually pretty noisy when they come through the water. If you have someone reel one by your head underwater, you'll notice that you can really hear, you know, like, it's like you can hear the hooks in the split ring rattling when they go by. But when the balsa baits go by, because of the kind of paints and their wood, they're solid instead of hollow, they have a totally different sound than those other baits. And I don't know if that's stuff people are interested in, but it's a world of difference in how they sound. And even like a spinnerbait, like, I noticed, this is going to sound silly, so it's going to sound like they were a bunch of whack jobs. But I know what a willy spinnerbait sounds like coming through the water compared to like a Colorado bladed spinnerbait. And I think people, if they played and did that stuff, they'd be shocked at what they could learn.
Yeah, I agree. Just experimenting and creating knowledge is like ultimate power for a fisherman. Like, it's crazy. Just in every technique, there's all these little nuances that we don't even think about. To get more bites and to understand, like, to have the total immersion in your bait and to understand every little aspect of it, and how it flickers off that one piece of milfoil sticking up, and how to maneuver your rod to pop that bait out. A lot of people just pop, but sometimes there's just the tiniest little thing that you can do and you get a bite. And once you figure out and you pay attention, it clues you into getting way more bites. And I think that's one thing as anglers that we can all do, is be more in tune of what's going on rather than just chuck and winding. Because when people think of crankbait fishing, a lot of times they just chuck and wind, and there's so many more nuances to it than that. But I do want to dive into, you're talking about 20-pound mono. I want to dive into your best setup for throwing these crankbaits, because I think that's an important thing for people to know, because balsa is a little bit lighter. It doesn't have the crazy weighting systems in it like plastic crankbaits do. And they're a little bit more of a pain in the butt to throw. If people that have thrown them know. So kind of dive right into your setup here, Phil.
Yeah, that's a question I get a lot, especially on the flat baits, because guys will say, you've heard the potato chip thing. The balsa ones are kind of hard to throw. So, and obviously I use power rods. I have for a long, long time. The model that I use for my flat baits, and any rod along this line will work, is I use a pretty soft rod. It has a real parabolic bend, kind of similar to the rod company that you were showing me before we started. Mine are really soft. Most guys would probably be surprised. I throw the Power Max series, and I don't know what the number is. I think the rod's 7 or 7.2, and it's a composite rod. Really, like, when you hook a fish, and like all those flat sides have those little hooks, just like the Fritz side you said comes with little hooks. And then big fish, when they pull underneath, a lot of times they swat them when the water's cold. You know how they'll tear off under the boat. Well, if guys will use these parabolic bend rods and real soft ones, that don't happen much. And also those softer rods are much easier to throw those flat baits. So I just use a Lose. I don't know what the model number is. I use a Lose 5-to-1 reel. And normally when I throw a flat bait in the spring, I throw 10-pound fluorocarbon most of the time. I throw Gamma Edge fluorocarbon. And the rods are really soft. I don't lose very many fish at all on a flat bait. And I fish with guys who lose them all the time because the rods that they're using are more like a spinnerbait rod, seems to me like. But when I go to a square bill in the summer, I throw fluorocarbon and I throw mono. It just depends on what I'm doing. But I normally am throwing a square bill with 15 to 20. I don't think it has nothing to do with getting a bite when you're winding it through cover, or I'm usually throwing a square bill when the water has a little color to it. And I'm using whatever pound test I want, depending on how deep it is or how thick the wood is. And then I throw a POW. I think it's a CB 725. It's like a 7.2 medium heavy, but it's a crankbait medium heavy. And it has a little less parabolic bend. It has a lot of tips, so you can make roll casts like spinnerbait fishing and stuff, but it still has the power to get those fish out. And then another thing that I do is I sell my baits with VMC hooks. They're really good hooks. But a lot of, like the hunting pea, I sell with number 4s. But when I throw a hunting pea myself, I throw that, what's that KVD trouble, the short shank, wide.
The triple grip.
Yeah, but I throw the short, wide one. You know what I mean? It's a short shank bar. I put a number 2 on there. You'll get hung up a little more, but the percentage of lost fish goes way down. So I would tell guys, don't be afraid to change out and put bigger hooks. You know, it's like the skinny pea comes with number 6s, but you could put short 4s or even full length 4s. You'll get hung up a little more, but you can actually make the bait suspend if you play. It's like I know you probably throw a shad wrap a lot. You know, a number 5 shad wrap is as good as you can buy about in the spring. Yeah. And when I throw a number 5 shad wrap, I usually put number 4s on it. And most of them, if you put number 4s on them and you throw like 10-pound fluorocarbon, they'll actually kind of suspend when you stop them. So one thing I would tell people, just because that's how I sell it or someone else sells it, doesn't mean that's how you have to throw it. Play around and change and experiments. Guys will be surprised how much they learn.
Absolutely.
And even steering the bait with the rod. I know I interrupted you, but like when you're fishing in laydowns, you can, if you don't want to get hung, you can just steer. You can still wind it. Just steer it with your rod tip. You can steer it right around stuff, you know, even though I like to bump into stuff. But if you don't want to, just use your rod tip. You can steer the bait 2 feet any direction you want easily.
Yeah, you're giving out all the golden nuggets, Phil.
Well, I hope I'm not I hope I'm not boring. You know, I mean, I play with them so much, you know, and I got all these ideas that go through my head. And I've had guys say, "Man, you guys are really weird getting in a pool winding baits by your head." But gosh, man, it's so cool to hear the difference.
Oh, just like pool is awesome. Like you can test out every bait, not just crankbait, and you can learn so much from doing that. But I do want to ask you one of the final 2 questions here to start wrapping up the show. And the one thing that I think is very prudent for a lot of people to know here is just simply like, how do you tune a crankbait? And I think this can be applied to any single crankbait. Like, what are your basic steps to understand on how to tune a bait and how to go about it correctly so that you don't over tune it and make your bait blow out and do all kinds of things and make it incorrect?
Right. I've got one here. I'll use this one without hooks, and this is all backwards. We dealt with this before. Yeah. You can see the line tie come out there. So if you throw any crankbait, it doesn't matter if it comes out of the bill. You're just going to bend it. You're still going to do the same thing. You're just going to bend it a little. You know, you'll be bending it sideways instead of back and forth. If it runs to the right, you take the line tie with a pair of needle nose, and it's going to be hard to show it like this, but you bend it just a tiny bit. And here's the thing that guys do is they'll tend to bend it too much. So you just barely tweak it, almost like you're just putting pressure. And you don't have to throw it far. Throw it 4 or 5 feet, wind it in. If it still runs to the right, bend it just a little bit to the left, and just keep tweaking it. And if you get it so it goes the other way, then you know you went too far. And it doesn't take very much at all. And what you're actually doing is you're centering the line tie in the lip, basically, when you do that. Or you're making up for inconsistencies in the lip angle. But it's real easy. It's one of the most common things I get asked. And I've done lots of I think I got a couple of videos on my YouTube channel, PH Custom Lures, that show it a little more in depth. But they're real easy. You can't hurt them. If you go too far, just go back the other way. And like under docks and stuff, you know, you can actually tune them so they'll run underneath a dock. You just got to have 2 rods, one for each side of the dock, I guess.
Just like they do with buzz baits. And just real quick, so everybody knows too, in the description of this show, that YouTube page will be linked, so you can get over there and check out PH Custom Lures on YouTube and see all the content that they have there. Absolutely. So, Phil, thanks for joining us here. And I do have one final question for you. As we talked about, the Lure Lab works with do-it molds, and we asked for a customization tip and all this other stuff that they do. They make all kinds of cool stuff to make your own tackle, paint up baits if you want. You can buy some balsa baits if you want in your own garage. Start with a little dream and paint them up and see what happens. And they have all the paint that you can do that for. But the question is, what is a good tip you can give someone who is looking to get more out of their crankbait?
Oh, I would say probably be careful the colors you pick. I don't think you have to have, we got hundreds of SKUs, lots of models. I think you don't have to buy them all. You don't have to have every model we make. They're all situational baits. They're like tools. And you don't have to have all the colors. Just pick the ones that you like. Make sure that you got something bright for dirty water and cloudy days, and make sure you got something white. And then I would say that a big thing for me is like I said a while ago, changing out those hooks. Like, if you want your bait to suspend, everybody throws suspend and jerk baits. Well, crankbaits will do it too. You can change your hooks or add suspend dots or things like that to it, and I think that'll keep you from having to buy so many models. And then, take care of them. Try not to, and it doesn't matter if you're throwing a plastic bait. I mean, I broke the lips out of lots and lots of Vision 110s, and that's the jerk bait that I throw the most in the winter. But you know what? I wouldn't break the lips out of them if I didn't throw them up on the rocks or throw them in the docks and stuff so much. So I think you give $20, $25 for a handmade bait. I mean, I guess I sell more baits if you break them, but I look at them more like they're like works of art, or they're like something to take care of, so use them. But even though I make them, I use them, but I try to take care of them. You know what I mean? And I don't put them back. Like, guys will put them back in the box wet, and next thing you know, they got a whole box full of square bills and all the hooks are rusted. Dry them off before you put them in there. It'll save you a bunch of money over the course of the year.
Somewhere so they can dry.
Yeah, exactly. Don't step on them in the boat. You know what I mean? And like, definitely don't slap balsa baits on the water to get the grass off. The flat baits, you can actually break them in half. Balsa is soft. A lot of people that haven't seen it, you'd be shocked. You can push your fingers in it before the bait's built, and leave dents in it. And that's what makes it special. It's so buoyant. So don't slap the leaves and the grass off. Grab it with your hand and take them off. And I know it's a pain, but they'll last 3 times as long.
A second longer to rip the grass as opposed
to
90% of the time when you slap the water anyways, it doesn't come off on the first try, and you're doing it 8-9 times over, and it would have been quicker just to pull it off.
And they're all more brittle in cold water too. I mean, like the Megabass jerk baits, and I'm not knocking them all. I love them. But if you notice, like, you break more of the lips when the water's cold than when it's warm. I think everything's just more brittle when it's cold.
It's a great point.
So I know we went over. I'm sorry. I could talk about balsa. Balsa baits.
Okay. What we'll have to do is we'll have to just get you on again and maybe talk about balsa topwater baits, because there's all kinds of cool ones that work all over the country. And I think that would be something that maybe we can do over the summertime, because I would love to dive in and talk about some of the topwater balsa options that there are out there that are completely overlooked by a lot of anglers outside of the immediate Southeast, especially Florida.
Yeah. So, and that's what we're building now. We're buried. I build the prop baits, and then I build 2 minnow wake baits. I build the old Buckeye Wake Up, because now that they don't have it, I actually got that from them, got the rights to it from them. And that's what we're selling now the most is topwaters, because of the bluegill spawn, prop baits, and then a lot of shad spawns going on. And these guys in the mountain lakes throw those wake baits at night and catch those. They catch bass, walleye, and stripers on them. So there's a lot more to balsa than just cranks.
100%. So, well, Phil, I want to say thank you for taking the time and joining us. I feel like I may have interrupted your fishing plans today, so I apologize on that. But
it's fine.
But thank you so much for joining us here on the Lure Lab, and I'm sure we will be talking plenty soon enough.
Yeah, I think it's cool what you do, that you talk about baits and techniques and stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very exciting project that we worked on and got it launched, and we love doing it. And I'm the tackle. They call me the tackle tinkerer over here, because I'm always messing with stuff and looking at baits and be like, now that won't work. Now this works. it's almost like a hidden passion of mine. I just love it. You can't see it here, but this bin back here is just full of stuff that I've just messed around with. So I'm like, yeah, I don't like this, I like that, and cut stuff up, see what I can do. And fun.
I would encourage everybody to go fish with you, because people, like, especially below where I live, if they've never experienced the smallmouth fishing on like the Finger Lakes or on the Great Lakes, they have no idea what they're missing out on.
Oh, it's fun.
It's better than the fishing anywhere in the South. Yeah. I mean, without a doubt, it's better fishing. You catch, what would you say a normal day on your trip is? 50 to 100 smallies?
Yeah, so this time of year, like an average day, on a really good day, if you hit it prime, is 50 to 100 smallmouth. Like right now, because we're in a spawn funk, it's like 25 to 40 fish and some exceptional days. And I truly try not to target fish when they're on bed, because I want them to do their things and protect their eggs. So I specifically tried to target out pre and post spawn fish. But a lot of times we catch spawners on accident as well, because we're doing techniques that are going to be around them, and we're just intercepting the other fish. But yeah, and then come summertime, it gets a little tougher, 5 to 15 fish in the middle of summer out on the Great Lakes. But that's when we go largemouth fishing, have some excellent days, and then other days we catch 5 to 8 fish. It's fishing. And then in the fall time, if you hit it right, you can catch 150, 200 smallmouth in a day. It's
incredible, isn't it? Yeah. Everybody should experience that once if they like to fish.
And it's not even just like how many fish we're catching, it's the overall size. This spring, I think I've been averaging around 4.25 per fish, which is just world class. Like, you go to Florida and you try to catch an 8-pounder, you're going to catch a lot of 1-pounders, and people don't realize that. And then you come up here, and every time you swing the bat, it's 4, and you're like, and I'm sitting here tossing back, and I'm like, oh, that's a small one, and it's 4.5, and I'm like, man, I got to think about this for a second, because this is the biggest smallie some of these people have ever seen in their lives. And I'm like, literally, an average fish.
At the end of the day, their wrist hurts from fishing with those spinning rods, holding them, and they swell up. And I tell people that all the time from down south, and they're like, no way. And I'm like, hey, you will get so sore in a good way that you have to start throwing a bait caster sometimes.
Yeah, one of my favorites was I think I had like a 3-day trip 2 years ago. My second year guiding, and the guy at like halfway through the third day was like, all right, can we just go get lunch, because my arms are on fire?
Yeah,
let's do it. Sounds great.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to come hang out with you a day. So
yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll be in touch, and I want to say thank you again, Phil. And if there's anything that you need, let us know, and we will chat soon, my friend.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You have a good one, Phil.
You too.
All right. Well, thanks everyone who tuned in and stayed here for this super long episode. We normally stay around the half-hour mark, but I do love getting guys on who are so excited to talk about specific things. And 50-minute episode here on the lab. It's happened before. We're not mad about it. We love it. So thank you for staying in. If you're still here at this point, if you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment down below. I asked you to in the middle of the show, so I hope you already did. And hit that thumbs up button. We appreciate it. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please hit that review button. It helps this podcast be seen to more bass fishermen like you and I alike. And be on the lookout for next week's episode, and we will see you next Saturday.